Hey folks, in this video we are going to be learning how to build an automated project tracker and to-do list in Google Sheets using Google AppScript. The structure of this video is going to be as follows. I'm going to start off by demoing the project tracker and to-do list functionality so you can see it in the spreadsheet. I'm going to show you the underlying code, and then we're going to go through a full tutorial where we build this environment from scratch. So the first tab that you're looking at here is a priorities queue. This is just an arbitrary set of distinctions that I've set in here where an individual can enter in certain types of priorities that they have. So an example of some priorities might be reporting, meetings, documentation, data collection, whatever you want to do. So I have these set as, just random things: main job, second job, third job, ad hoc work. But you can put in anything you want to here. And when you add in a new name, it will automatically create a new ranking system. This ranking system isn't really important in here, but I did include it just so that it was an easy thing for me when I was thinking about the way that I structure my work. So you can see when you drag things up and down, it'll change the rank automatically. The next tab is a to-do list. So this is just kind of like an ephemeral enter in things. You don't want to keep it. Something just to kind of say like write script for video, record video, post video. And then you can add in notes if you want to in here, be like, I don't have a script, I am recording the video, right? So this is another thing where you can kind of like move things up and down if you want to. It doesn't really matter. But then here's the cool thing is that I'm not writing a script, or I already have. So once I select this box here, you'll see that it will remove the item and then add a new row down here so that I always have an option of 9 to-do items, so I can expand and contract it if I want to. So I am in the process of recording my video, so I can select another thing. You can see it removes it and then it adds a new row. I had been experimenting with various ways of maintaining to-do lists in my professional life. So I was creating Google documents and all this type of stuff, and nothing was really working for me. And I came up with this, and it's a fairly new thing for me, but I have enjoyed it thus far, which is why I'm recording a video, because I thought it might be helpful or interesting to you. One additional note is that the underlying code base is going to be dynamic. So if you did want to create new columns, for example, so you can see I'm adding in columns in here for no real apparent reason, it won't matter. It will dynamically expand and contract. So you can see I added in 2 columns and it didn't matter. This column or this functionality still remained. I also can remove columns and it will continue to work. So this is really dynamic, so you can really tailor it to whatever you need for your to-do list. The next tab is going to be a project tracker. So this is going to be a little bit more of a record keeping tool in this environment. So you can see I already have some things in here where I'm entering in the date that I'm starting a project, the project or task name, and then I have my priorities in here. So you can see these priorities are literally feeding in from that priorities tab. So you can select anything you want to in here. It doesn't really matter. The cool thing about this environment is it has a automated sorting mechanism. So you can see that I have 6 categories in here. And this show the project tracker is currently in my backlog. What I'm going to do is set it to I'm going to say up next. And what's going to happen is it's going to automatically move this row to the top like that. So let's say that it is now being delivered. It will now automatically adjust this list so that as you change your status, your line items will move accordingly. So I have some, unnecessary, or not unnecessary, but just like extra columns in here where I have the ability to add descriptions and add status updates and deliverables and whatever. And then again, it has another completed checkbox over there. So now that I've showed the project tracker, I can select completed, and then it will remove the item and then add in a new row so that the tracking environment always updates. Now, this is the same thing as the other row where, we don't need these 3 columns over here, or you don't need them, so we can delete them. And this functionality will still remain. Same thing, you can add columns if you want to, change the order of columns if you want to. All of it will work. Now, the cool thing about this as well is that view will then feed a secondary sheet so that you have a record of the tasks or projects that you've completed. So the goal here is to create a database or a set of data so that you can communicate out to other people when you started things, when you finished things, how many of a certain thing you did, just keeping record keeping or maintaining record keeping so that you don't have to. So you'll notice though that because I changed the column order over here, some functionality did not align. So you just want to make sure that you're consistent with whatever your taxonomy is, meaning like what columns or data points you're collecting. But you can see that it also tags up a completed date. The reason that I did that was so that you could have some mechanism in order to say, I started here, I ended here. So this number is automatically interjected by the underlying code. Cool. So we are now going to move on to the second phase of this work, or of this video, and we're going to review the code. This code is going to require 4 Google AppScript files. The first is going to be a custom function called getSheetById. This is my preferred way of accessing Spreadsheet app or leveraging Spreadsheet app. So if you watched any of my other videos, this is a very common function that I build out. This will enable us to access sheets in the workbook by their ID rather than by their name. The next function that we're going to build is going to be the task tracker. So that view that we just looked at is that function. So what's happening in here is we're going to get the date today, and then we're going to format it in a way so that it appears in month, day, year formatting. And then we are going to collect our data from the task sheet. And then we are going to write some logic to review all of that data and then identify what data has been completed. And if it is completed, move it over to the completed sheet. Our third function is going to be our sorting mechanism for the priority queue. So this is the function that is identifying where a line item needs to be moved within the sheet. So if it is in the backlog, or it's in review, or it's been delivered, this will take care of this. The final function will be a similar function as the task tracker. This will be the underlying logic for the to-do list. So this one's a little bit more streamlined than the task tracker because we don't need to maintain records. We just need to remove completed items and then add a new row. And then we're going to be automating this logic using AppScript's internal trigger mechanisms. So we're going to be using onEdit triggers that will fire every time an edit is made to the spreadsheet. In terms of difficulty, this is an intermediate. I would describe this as an intermediate level project. I think it's a great project that you can show it to people and they'll be like, oh wow, cool, I see that things are happening in there. Additionally, you might find this to be a valuable tool for your own organizational purposes, or some of this logic may be applicable to other projects that you would want to undertake. With that being said, if you are on the beginner to intermediate scale, I would recommend that you just have some patience with this and potentially approach it in chunks if this is of interest to you. We are going to be using loops. We are going to be using arrays. So, there might be some gnarly code in here if it's the first time that you're looking at it, right? Like this section in here might be a little bit difficult because of the underlying syntax in here, right? Like this line of code right here on line 23, it's not easy to look at if you don't know what it's saying. So I'm going to be trying to move methodically, and I'm going to try and articulate all of the things that are happening in here. If this is new to you, go slow. Pause the video at various points. You can see I'm going to try and include logging in here so that you can see what's happening and why we're doing it. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out in the comments section. My email address is also in my About section. I've had a really wonderful experience where people are reaching out to me and asking questions, and we can handle it one-on-one. Just for your information, it's difficult for me to evaluate an error if you ask me about why am I getting this error. If you can share with me sample code or a copy code or anonymous code, that's easier for me to see what syntax you're using, because in a lot of instances people have issues because they're missing a parentheses, or they have an extra parentheses, or they have an extra curly bracket. So I'm always happy to help. I always encourage information security, so feel free to send me copies and all that type of stuff, and I'm always happy to help you as best as I can. With that out of the way, we're going to begin the tutorial phase. So we are going to navigate over to Google Drive. You can see that I am in an empty folder. I would encourage you to create a folder for your project. As you get more advanced into programming, coding, whatever, having clean access to sources of information or endpoints for information is going to be a valuable asset for you. And I think that maintaining folder systems or directories is a really great way to accomplish that. So once you're in Drive and you're in the place that you want to store your project, we're going to create a new spreadsheet. So we're going to navigate up to the New menu, and then we are going to select Spreadsheet. We are going to rename the spreadsheet Project Tracker. Project Tracker and To-Do List. And we are going to create our first tab, which will be our priorities. So you can structure this however you want to. I am going to be recreating the priority queue that I showed you at the beginning of the video. So I'm going to go over to cell B1, and I'm going to type in name, and then I'm going to add a notes section. And I am going to highlight row 1. I'm on a Mac, so I did Shift Spacebar. That may be the same keyboard shortcut for Windows. And then I'm going to do Command B in order to bold the first line, and then I'm going to hold down Control Option V. That opens up the View menu item, so you can navigate with your mouse if you want to. And then I'm going to go to the Freeze sub menu item, so I'm going to hit R. You can see it's underlined. The R is underlined in Freeze, which is the hotkey for opening up that menu. And then I am going to freeze the first row. So you can see on the option there, one row, the O is underlined, so I'm going to hit O, and now I have a freeze. The reason I did that is because now when I scroll up and down, you can see the first row remains. So now I'm going to add in some logic to rank the name menu, or the main column, sorry, the name column. So I'm going to hit equal sign, and then I'm going to be using an array formula. I'm going to hit Command Enter to go into a new line. I do this because I like readability, or I should say this helps me read, so I do it. So I'm going to use an if statement, and then I'm going to say B:B. That will reference the entire second column when using an array formula. And I'm going to say when it equals B1, I want you to comma, double quote, rank, double quote. So basically this is saying that if any cell in B through B is equal to B1, then call it rank. This is a fun little trick so that your header columns have a name instead of doing the underlying logic. Next, we're going to add a comma, and we're going to nest an if statement within our if statement. And we are going to say if B through B is equal to two double quotes. This is the syntax for null in Google Sheets. So if any cell in B through B is null, then I want you to give me null. So we're going to do comma, double quote, double quote. This is just a logical management of null values or blank cells so that we don't get an error message, because we don't want error messages. We just want blank cells or blank appearing cells. So we're going to use a comma. I'm going to hit Command Enter. So we're going to now nest additional logic in here, and we're going to use the row function. And then we are going to do B through B. We're going to close the parentheses, and then we're going to subtract 1, and then we're going to hit Enter. And you can see nothing is happening in here because we have that null conditional in here. So for example, I don't want you to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove if B through B equals nothing and give me nothing. I'm going to remove this extra parentheses here, and then I'm going to hit Enter. You can see because we don't have any type of conditional that says if it's blank, don't do anything. It's now just giving you the row columns, or sorry, the row numbers. So that's what row is doing. That's additionally why we're doing a -1 on here. If we don't have -1, you can see that now we're just getting the row number. So that's what the row function does. It's a logical mechanism in order to extract the row number into your data set. So when we use -1, you can see that we are subtracting the row number by 1 in order to get the actual rank, right? So because we're using row 1 as a header row, when we subtract 1 from the row, we actually get the rank. So we have adjusted our logic system to have a ranking mechanism in here. Now, additionally, I'm going to hit Command Z, and you can see there is now nothing appearing there because we have some underlying logic that says if there's no name, then we don't want to see the rank. So now I'm going to add in priority 1, and now you can see we're getting a rank in there. I'm going to add in priority 2, and then we are going to add in priority 3, and then we are going to add in reporting and ad hoc. Again, these are just placeholders because I don't know what you need out of this mechanism. So I'm just kind of giving you some examples. Cool. So something that I didn't do in my live tracker is I didn't use the rank in order to prioritize the ordering of my tracking sorter, right? So I just hard coded the names. So what we can do here is we can use this notes column. You can keep a notes column if you want to, but I'm going to add in another array formula in here. And I am going to hit Command Enter to get a line break. And then I'm going to use some logic in here. And I'm going to say if B through B is equal to B1, then I want you to call this logic name. I'm going to add a comma, Command Enter to go to the next line. I'm going to add in a conditional logic that says if the cell in B through B is null, then give me null. Otherwise, I want to concatenate B through B. Actually, sorry, we're going to concatenate A through A and double quote, space, double quote, ampersand, B through B. We're going to hit enter. And now you can see we have a name over here that has a number. We can use this name in our project tracker so that when we want to automate the sorting of our tracker, we have it built in so that we don't have to hard code our priority queues. So for example, if you decide that you want to move your reporting up to 2, you have it. So this is one way that you could automate the sorting of your project tracker. I did it based upon backlog, reporting name, all that type of stuff. You could also do it for your priority queues. So there's a lot of logical things that you can build in to automate your personal tracker. And I'm showing this to you so that you have some options when you think about how you want to build this out for yourself. Our next step is going to be building out our to-do list. So this is going to have, you know what, I'm just going to keep it to 2 columns. So we're going to have our item and then the completed status. So if you want to, you can have more than 1 column in here. So like in my live version, I have a notes section. Doesn't matter, you don't have to have that. You can see I've added in a freeze. You can feel free to do that as well. I only want 10 to-do options. So I'm going to have it up to row 11. I'm going to highlight B2 through B11. I'm going to go up to the insert menu, and then I'm just going to select checklist. So one thing that I want you to note is that the way that checklists work is it's true or false. That means it's a Boolean field. So you can see up top here, it says false, and that results in the visualization of a blank box. So once you select to check it, you can see it's turning into true. So this is something to keep in mind as you approach Google AppScript because it is going to return results, meaning you know, this is not null, this is true or false. So every row that has a checkbox technically has a value in there. So if you are saying get last row, it is literally going to pull in row 11 because there is a value in the last row. Next thing we're going to do, oops, sorry, I have an extra capital O there, so I'm just going to change that formatting. We're going to build out our, we'll call it our project tracker. So this can have as many fields as you want to as well. I'm going to have a start date and then project, and then we're going to have priority, and then we can have status. And then we're going to finally have our completed row or column, and then I'm going to delete all these extra columns in here, and then we're going to start with 20 projects. So I am going to go down to row 21 because our first row is a header column. So I am going to use Command B in order to bold it, Control Option V to open up the view menu, R to open up freeze, and then O for row 1. I'm going to also give myself a little extra padding here. So I'm going to resize the row to be 75. And then I am also going to change the vertical alignment to middle and the text wrapping to wrap. I'm also going to resize my columns a little bit. Project is going to be a little bit bigger. And I'm also going to center column C, D, and E. I'm going to make sure that status actually says status. And then I am going to add checkboxes to the completed menu. For priority, we are going to reference our priorities queue. So I am going to go to data validation. And then we are going to add a rule, and we're going to change the criteria from drop down to drop down from range. And then we are going to use column B. Oh, sorry. So we're going to select this box over here. We're going to select the data range, and then we're just going to select B2 through B6 or B2 through whatever row yours is. And then if you want to, you can add color in here so that you can quickly scan your list. So then I'm going to hit done. And I'm going to go to project tracker. And now you can see we have our priorities in here. So you could also use the logic name here if you wanted to, which will allow you then to filter by priority if that's what you want to. My preference is going to be filtering by status. So I'm going to add a rule in here, and then I am going to manually enter my status in here using drop-down criteria. So I am going to use 0, and I am going to say up next, because 0 comes before 1. You could also use 1 if you wanted to. It's up to you. 1 is going to be in progress. I'm going to add another item. 2 is going to be in review. 3 is going to be delivered. Sorry if I misspelled that. 4 is going to be blocked. And 5 is going to be backlog. Cool. So up next can remain gray. In progress can be green because it's a go. And you know what? Yellow. I don't know why. In review can be light blue. Delivered can be green because it's a go. Blocked is red because that's a stop sign. And backlog can be black because it's just not there yet. Cool. So now we have a mechanism to enter a bunch of data in here. I am going to use the today function just so that we have some data in here. I'm going to Command C and then Command Shift V to paste value. I am going to hard align this to the left. And then I am going to create the final sheet in my tracker, which will be the completed sheet. So this is going to be really dependent upon whatever your taxonomy is. So when I say taxonomy, I mean these columns are data points that you want to collect. So if you have more or less columns than I have, that's great. I would recommend highlighting all of the columns that are not the completed ones. In this system, I am going to be excluding the completed column because I don't need a check mark in there to tell me that it's completed. In our completed sheet, you can paste in your column names with the exception of completed, and then you can add in end date because that's where we're going to automatically filter in when you completed the task, meaning when you selected that it was completed. That's why you don't need this in here because you don't really need a column that just says true, 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 true. Like I said, this is false. And then once you select completed, it will become true. You really don't need that data. What is a more valuable data point, in my opinion, is when you actually hit completed. And that's what we'll go over here. So I'm going to do some styling on that, bold it, access the view menu, go to freeze, and then I'm going to just do the first row. That way we can always scroll up and down. We're going to remove these extra columns over here, and then we can keep the rows because hopefully this project is so beneficial to us that we use it for an extended period of time. Great. So now we're going to move into the AppScript portion of the video. This is going to be the underlying logic that powers the automation of this task tracker. Before we do that, I'm going to add in a project name. So I'm going to call this test, and I'm going to add in our priority. And oh, I actually just noticed that we don't have our status entered in up top here. My apologies for that. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and we're going to go up to data, and we're going to go to data validation. And I don't know if this impacted you, but you can see here I mistakenly started at the bottom of my list. So I have D15 through D21. I'm going to select in here, and I'm just going to change that from D15 to be D2 colon D21. And when I hit done, we can go up, and now you see we have a status. I'm going to add in a status of up next. That way we just have some data points as we start to explore our AppScript. So to get to AppScript, we're going to go up to the extensions menu, and then we're going to select AppScript. We are going to change our untitled project to be called Project Tracker Logic. And then we are going to be creating some additional files. So we're going to select add file, we're going to select script, and then we're going to say func space 00 colon get sheet by ID. So this is going to be our first function. This is a helper function that will help us access the sheets by their IDs rather than by their names. So I cleared out the boilerplate code. You can keep it if you want to. I'm going to begin by typing out the word function, get capital S sheet by capital B, capital ID. We're going to have empty parentheses, and we are going to pass one input, which is going to be the sheet ID. We're going to go to the right of the parentheses, and then we are going to add curly brackets. We're going to hit enter twice, and then we're going to add 2 slashes in order to add a comment, which will say access the workbook. We're going to hit enter, tab. We're going to declare a variable called WB, which is short for workbook. We're going to set that equal to capital S spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. We're going to use an empty parentheses. We're going to go to the right, and we're going to add a semicolon. One note, the reason that we can leverage get active spreadsheet is because we are using a bound AppScript. That means that this file was generated by using a Google Sheet, a Google document, a Google presentation, some type of other Google productivity app. If you open up an AppScript that is not connected or bound to another Google file, then you're not going to be able to use this syntax here because there is no active spreadsheet with which to reference. So you can use the file ID or the file URL in order to access the spreadsheet. We are using a bounded spreadsheet, so that doesn't really matter for us. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow twice, and we're going to add 2 slashes so that we can add another comment called access the sheets. We're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab, and then we're going to declare another variable called sheets. And we're going to set that equal to wb.get capital S sheets. And have an empty parentheses. We're going to add a colon or semicolon, and then we're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, and we're going to add 2 slashes, and we are going to add a comment that says loop through the sheets. We're going to hit enter and tab. So the way that this function works is we are going to enter a sheet ID, and then we need to evaluate every sheet in the workbook to find the one that has the ID that we're looking for. So the sheets variable on line 7 is going to access every sheet within our workbook. We are now going to be using a for loop in order to iterate through all those sheets, where we can then evaluate their ID numbers. So we're going to use the word for, and then we're going to have an empty parentheses, and we're going to use a variable. I'm using I as my variable because it stands for iterator. You can use any variable you want to, but it is pretty standard for people to use I as the variable in their for loop. So we're going to say for parentheses I space in space, and then we're going to reference our sheets variable. We're going to go to the right of the parentheses, we're going to add curly brackets, and we're going to hit enter. Now we are going to have 2 slashes, and we're going to add a comment that says conditional to evaluate the input. We're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab. We're going to use if. We're going to use open parentheses, and we're going to say sheets square bracket I dot get sheet ID open parentheses, go to the right, 2 equal signs, sheet underscore ID. Go to the right of the parentheses, hit space, curly bracket, hit enter. We're going to review what we just did there. We are using an if statement in order to evaluate all of the sheets. We are then collecting their IDs using the getSheetID method. We're using 2 equal signs in order to evaluate the input of our function. So we are going to be passing an identification number into the getSheetById function. It is then going to be used in the if statement within our for loop that is looping through every sheet in the workbook. Once the if statement finds the ID that is passed into the function, we will then have that identification number in order to extract the sheet name. We're going to enter 2 slashes in here, and we are going to write exactly what I just said, extract the sheet name, enter tab. We're going to declare a variable of sheet name, and we're going to set it equal to sheets square bracket I dot get sheet name, open parentheses, go to the right, semicolon. We're going to hit the down arrow once, down arrow twice, hit enter once, hit enter twice, hit the left arrow twice, add in 2 slashes for our final comment in this function, return the sheet name, enter tab, return space wb dot get sheet by name, open parentheses, and then pass in that sheet name variable that comes from your for loop nested within the if statement. wb dot get sheet by name is the native method for extracting or accessing a sheet name using Spreadsheet app. The reason that I encourage using getSheetById is because if the name of your sheet changes, getSheetByName will no longer function, right? So if you hard code in the name sheet 1 and then you later change it to to-do list, the underlying logic will break. You will then have to modify your code. Ideally, you establish code that is dynamic and is capable of responding to your stimuli so that if you want to reference an identification number or something, your underlying logic won't break. It will make your code more adaptable and therefore able to be used in a varying degree of circumstances rather than a single circumstance. This logic here is one mechanism that I use on a daily basis in order to increase the functionality of my code. We're going to save our project, and we're going to go to the code file just to make sure that this function works. So we are going to hit enter once, and we're going to use 2 slashes, and we're going to say test the get sheet by ID function. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to type capital L logger.log, and then we're going to use an open parentheses, and we are going to say get sheet by ID, and then we are going to pass in a sheet ID. So we're going to go back to our spreadsheet, and we're going to use the project tracker. So we're going to select the ID up here. So you can see this is my sheet ID. If you're using sheet 1, you can see that that is going to be 0. So you know what? I'm going to use 0. You can use whatever sheet ID you want to. So I'm going to pass 0 into get sheet by ID. I'm going to save my function. I'm going to run it, and then it's going to ask me to authorize permissions. You have to do this when using AppScript. So you're going to select your account. You're going to go to advanced. The reason that it's saying this is because Google hasn't verified that this app isn't malicious. It's not malicious. We're just asking to read and write to a spreadsheet. So you're going to select advanced, and then you're going to select this bottom line under here. Mine says go to Project Tracker Logic because that's the name that I entered into the name field. It's just telling me that I'm allowing access to see, edit, create, and delete my Google Sheet spreadsheets. So if you don't trust your app, don't allow this. But I trust it because I'm writing it. So you can see we're returning a sheet. So what we could do now is we could say dot, and you don't have to do this. I just want you to see, we could do get range 1, 1, dot get display value, run it. And you can see I'm getting some native code in here. That's because I don't have a parentheses. So I'm going to hit run again. And now you can see I'm getting rank. So if we go back to sheet 1, you can see our first cell is rank. If I do row 1, column 2, then we'll get name. Cool. So now we're getting name. So this function is working. This is one way to test your code. This doesn't matter. You don't need this for the underlying logic, but you do need get sheet by ID to work. So if you are getting errors, I'm going to open up the function now. You can pause your video, make sure that your code is lining up with my code. Now, additionally, if you don't want to use get sheet by ID, you can use wb.getSheetByName, and you can just hard code the name of your sheet. But like I said, if your sheet name changes, you're going to have to open up your AppScript and then change the name in the script file. Cool. So now we're going to move to the second function in our file, which is going to be our task tracker. So we're going to change the name from untitled to FUNC space 01 task tracker. I'm going to clear out the code, and I'm going to begin by writing function task tracker. It's going to have an empty parentheses. We are not going to be passing any arguments to the task tracker function. We're going to use a curly bracket. We're going to hit enter once, hit enter twice, and then we're going to add 2 slashes in order to enter a comment. So this comment is going to say today's date. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable called new date. And we're going to set that equal to new space capital D date. We're going to have a semicolon. So this is an internal mechanism in order to get the date from AppScript. So we're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, and then we are going to add a comment, and we're going to call this formatted date. We're going to hit enter once, hit tab. Now, before we move on to the next mechanism, we're going to add some logging. So we're going to do logger.log, and then we're going to do parentheses and type new date in there, semicolon. So you don't have to do this, but like I said, we're going to be doing some complicated things in here. I just want to make sure that you know what we're doing so that if you want to tailor this to your own use cases, you're not just following what I'm saying, you're understanding why I'm doing it, or at least you're given a chance to kind of see what's happening so that you can modify if need be. So we're going to hit save. You can see my function now turned into task tracker, and we're going to run this. And now you can see that the new date is giving me my date and time. So this is when I'm recording this video, and you can see that I'm getting a lot of metadata in here, or a lot of data. I'm getting the text name of the day, I'm getting the month name, the day name, the time of day, to the time zone that I'm in, as well as the year. So we don't want all of that, or at least I don't want all of that. What we want to do is just get, I'm in the United States, so I do things month, day, year. So that's what I want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove line 7, and I am going to declare a variable of date, capital C, complete. This is where we're going to be getting our completed date. So we're going to reference new date, and then we're going to use dot, and we're going to say to capital L local date string. We're going to use an empty parentheses. We're going to use a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and then we're going to type access the sheet. But before we do that, I'm going to hit enter and tab, and I'm going to use some logging again. So I'm going to do logger.log. I'm going to pass date complete in there because I want you to see how new date is being modified by the to local date string method. So I'm going to run it for you. And now you can see, instead of getting all of that data that we had been, we are now just getting the month, day, year formatting that is my desired result. Cool. So I'm going to remove that logging line because I don't need it anymore. And now I'm going to declare a variable called tasks. And I'm going to set that equal to get sheet by ID. I'm going to go back to my sheet. I'm going to open up my project tracker, and I am going to collect the identification number of the sheet. The way that you can find the identification number is that it's at the end of the URL, and it is followed by the GID equal sign of the string. So we're going to copy out this number here. We're going to go back to our script, and we're just going to paste it into our getSheetById function. We could also come up with a config file if we wanted to. I'm just going to hard code it in here just because. I'm going to add a semicolon at the end. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, and then we're going to add 2 slashes to add another comment. So we are going to collect the data. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable called data entry. And we're going to set that equal to tasks dot get range. We're going to have an open parentheses. Get range takes 4 arguments. The first argument is our starting row, so we're going to start at row 1. We're going to use a comma. The second argument is the starting column. We're going to start at column 1. We're going to add a comma. The third argument is the number of rows that you want to collect data from. I want to reference this programmatically so that I collect every sheet that has data in it. So I'm going to do tasks dot get last row, open parentheses, go to the right of it, and our final argument is the number of columns that we want to go. So we're going to use a similar function where we're going to reference the tasks sheet, and then we are going to use get last column. We're going to use an open parentheses. We're going to hit right once. We're going to hit right twice. And then we're going to use dot get capital D display values. Now, make sure you are mindful of this. There is a get display value and a get display values. Because our tasks sheet has multiple values, we need to use get display values. If you do not have that S in there, then it will only be able to pull in one value and you'll likely get an error message. So make sure you have get display values and then an open parentheses. Go to the right, semicolon, hit enter. We're now going to have some logging in here, and we're going to keep this log in here so that we are constantly getting feedback about what's being passed through this function. So we're going to use capital L logger.log, and then we are going to enter in our data entry variable. We're going to go to the right and add a semicolon. We're going to save our project, and then we are going to run it. And now you can see we're getting the data, or you should be getting the data from your tasks sheet. So you can see we have our header rows in here, and then we have our first row that we've entered data. And then you'll notice, because we are using checkboxes, we have a bunch of empty arrays. So what you're looking at here is a two-dimensional array, which is also known as a list of lists. The way that you can tell that this is a list of lists is because of these square brackets here. That's an indication of a list. That's how they're structured. So they are comma separated values that are within a square bracket. So the section of my logger that I've highlighted here is an array. It's also known as a list. A list is a set of data in a square bracket that is comma separated. You'll notice that we have multiple lists because they are comma separated within a larger list. That's why it's called a list of lists, because you have multiple lists that are comma separated in a larger list. We are also going to add some logging to get the length of our list. So we are going to do data entry, and then we're going to add a square bracket, and we're going to pass in 0. Now, I just want you to see what this does before I add in the additional logging. So I'm going to save my project, and I'm going to run it. So when you enter in 0 like this, that is accessing the first point of your two-dimensional array. So we are accessing the first list in a list of lists. If we wanted to access a value within the list, we could then add in a second set of square brackets and enter in another value. So when I enter in data entry, square bracket 0, square bracket 0, I'm saying I want to access the first list from the list of lists. The second 0 is then saying I want to access the first value from the first list, from the list of lists. So when I run this, well, let me open up my execution log. You can see I'm accessing this first list in here. That's why we're seeing start date, project, priority, status completed. When I say 0, the result is going to be, we're going to see this list of lists here first, and then the value here is just going to be start date. So I'm going to run this again. And now you can see we're just getting start date. So the reason that I wanted to log this originally is because I wanted you to see that we are eventually going to be leveraging our data entry variable in order to dynamically reference the number of columns that we have. So that is going to be the way that we set up logical conditions that will allow you to add and remove columns in order to decide, whether you want a status field or you want some, data deliverables or whatever, right? We're going to be leveraging data entry in order to evaluate how many columns we have. We're going to do that by referencing our first row. The first row will always denote what our column names are. Thus, it will provide us a logical way to always track how many data points we're collecting. So when we do our first row like that, we can then use .length in order to get the number of columns that we have. So when I add data entry square bracket 0 .length, you can see I'm getting the number 5 in here. So we're getting start date, project, priority, status, completed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're now dynamically getting the number of columns that we have in our data set. So just so that you can see it, I'm going to go back here. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to add in an additional column to my tracker. And now you can see when I run this, I'm getting the number 6. So we have a way to dynamically see how many columns we have at any various times. Now, this isn't plugged into anything yet. We're just getting the output because we're using logger.log. But there is going to be a point that we're going to reference this logic, and I wanted you to understand what was going on. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to delete my column. We were originally at 6, and now when we run it, we're going to be back to 5. Wonderful. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to add double quotes. I'm going to comment, or you know what? I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to add double quotes here, and I'm going to say values to write to the completed sheet. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and then we're going to declare a variable called array, capital C, complete, and we're going to set it equal to empty square brackets. We're going to go to the right of the square brackets, and we're going to add a semicolon. The reason that we're doing this is because we're going to have to loop through our array in order to see what values have been completed. Then we're going to be writing to an empty array so that we just have a list of the completed values. So we're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow twice. We're going to do 2 slashes. And now we are going to loop through the data entry variable. So we're going to hit enter. We're going to hit tab. And we are going to use 4 parentheses I in data entry. We're going to go to the right of our parentheses. We're going to add a curly bracket. We're going to hit enter. We're going to add 2 slashes, and we're going to say conditional to evaluate the completion status. We're going to hit enter. We're going to hit tab. We're going to say if data entry square bracket I. We're going to go to the right, and now we are going to need to enter in the number that represents the true-false portion of the data entry variable. So we're going to go back up to our execution log up here, and we are going to count our arrays, or the array point. So this is going to be dependent upon your taxonomy, right? So for me, I technically have 5 columns of data. So my first column is start date, my second column is project, my third column is priority, my fourth column is status, and my fifth is completed. So I need to enter in a value that represents completed status. Now, the reason that I said enter a value is because arrays are 0 indexed. That means that the first value is actually 0. It is not 1. So start date is technically 0. And if you recall, when I went up top here and I wrote data entry square bracket 0, that returned my first list in my list of lists. When I added a second square bracket and passed in 0, that returned start date. The reason for that is because lists are 0 indexed. So you start at 0, and then you go to 1, 2, 3, 4. So in order for this to work, we are going to have to enter in 4. So we would say if data entry I4 is equal to, and then we're going to use single quotes, all caps true. Now, I just said equal to, meaning you have to enter in 2 equal signs. In your conditional statement, you are evaluating if they are the same thing. If you have a single equal sign, you will be declaring this value as true. You don't want to do that. So you want to have if data entry I, and then your last column index, meaning it's 0 indexed, is equal to true, then you will start returning results. Now I'm starting by hard coding my value in here, but we are going to be adding in some dynamic logic here so that we don't have to hard code this. So we are going to use curly brackets, and then we're going to hit enter, and then we are going to add in um, 2 slashes in order to add a comment, and we are going to eventually we are going to drop the true result because we don't need it. We're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab, but for the time being we're going to do some logging. So we're going to do logger.log, and then we are going to, you know what, I'm going to try and do data entry square bracket I. So if we go back to our project tracker, you can see that we don't have anything checked off. So when we run this, we shouldn't get any results. So I'm going to save my project. I'm going to hit run. And you can see nothing came back. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to check completed. And we're going to go back and we're going to run this again. And now we should get some results. Yep, you can see we are getting that first line in there that says the start date, the name, the priority, the status, and then the completion status. So it has been marked as true. And just so that you can see it again, I'm going to add in some more values in here. I'm going to say today, parentheses. I'm going to add 5 just so that we have some extra stuff in here. Boom. And we're going to say another project, and I'm going to set that to reporting, and I'm going to say that this is in progress. Now you'll notice it's not sorting because I don't have any logic for that yet. We're going to go back here. We're going to run our task tracker again, and you can see we have up top here a true result, and then we also have actual data entry in here that it has not been completed yet, so it is not showing up because our conditional is working the way that we want it to. Now, the problem that I have with this at present is we have this hard-coded. So for example, if we add a new column in here, you don't have to do this, I just want you to see. We are no longer getting any results because we're still looking for the 5th column, technically, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to leverage this data entry.length in order to dynamically extract the column name. And the way that we're going to do that is you can see that data entry.length is going to count using 1 as a starting point. So the way that we're going to adjust that is we are going to subtract 1 from data length. And when we hit save and run, you can now see that we're getting number 5. So what we're going to do is we are going to, you can either copy it or you can remove the logging from here. And you know what I'll do just so that you can see it if you want to. You don't have to do this part. This is totally optional. I'm going to add in single quotes and I'm going to say completed, or sorry, I'm going to call this last column of data. I'm going to add a colon, a space, single quote, space, plus sign, space. And now when I do that, in our logging, oh, sorry. Why is that happening there? Logger, da, 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 da. Let's see what happens if I wrap this in parentheses like that. Okay, perfect. So we are now getting last column of data is 5. And then if I go in here like this, I can delete this. And when I run it, I'm now getting last column of data 4. And you can see we are now returning our results again. So what I'm going to do is hit enter twice after that logging there, add 2 slashes, and say dynamic variable to track last column. We're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab, and then we're going to declare a variable of last, capital C, column, and we're going to set it equal to parentheses data entry, square bracket 0, dot, length, -1. And now what we're going to do, I'm going to hit enter so that we can scroll our code up a little bit. What we're going to do is we are going to, instead of hard coding the last column into our conditional within the for loop, we're going to delete that, and then we are just going to type in last column equals true. So we're going to run our code again, and you can see our last column of data is coming back as 4, and we are still returning results even though we are now dynamically referencing our last column. So I'm going to go back to my sheet. I'm going to add one column in there. You don't have to do this. I just want you to see. I'm going to run it again. And you can see our last column of data is 5, and we are still returning results. That's because our last column is now being logically defined by the last column variable. So we're looking to see how many columns we have, and then we are subtracting 1 from it so that the numerical value aligns with the 0 index logic of an array. Cool. So I'm going to go back to my project tracker, and I am going to delete that column. Now, I just want to note that this logic will work as long as you keep your completed column as the last column in your data set. Let's say that you add columns to the right of this. This logic will no longer work because it's looking for the last column of data. So if you are adding columns, make sure that you're adding them in a place that will not upset the logic system that you have in place. Now, the architecture that I've come up with for this project tracker is that these 2 columns are going to act as logical points for your environment to be sorted and added or removed. So if you are adding columns, just make sure, and if you're adding in the sorting mechanism and the completion status and all that type of stuff, make sure that these align with the underlying logic so that as you expand or contract your environment, your code still is capable of running. Cool. So we no longer, you know what, we're going to keep this logging in here. But as I said, we do not need this true result. So what we're going to do is we are going to use the pop method in order to drop the last result. So we are going to reference data entry, square bracket I, and then we're going to go to the right of our square bracket and we're going to type dot pop, and then we're going to use empty parentheses. So we're going to copy our logger.log line here. We're going to remove it. We're going to go to the right of our data entry index.pop, and we are going to hit enter, and then we are going to paste our logger.log in there again, just so that you can see what's happening. So when we look at our execution log, you can see that when we ran it the first time, we returned a true result. Now when we run it, we should not see that true result anymore. Yep, so now you can see the pop mechanism has removed the last value from our array, which is wonderful. So we are going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes, and we are going to push the completed date variable to the array. So we're going to hit enter and tab. So we're going to reference data entry again, square bracket I. We're going to use dot, and we're going to use the push method. We're going to have an empty parentheses, and we are going to reference, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. We're going to reference our date complete variable. So we're going to pass date complete in there. We're going to go to the right, and we're going to use a semicolon. I'm going to copy that logger.log field again. I'm going to go to the right of the push the completed date variable to the array section. I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to paste my logging in there again. I want you to see what's happening. You can do this if you want to. I think it's good, but you don't have to. We're going to save our project. We are going to run it. And now you can see, instead of having true, we are getting that date complete variable in here. The reason that that happened is because we used pop to remove the true result, which is the last value in our array. And then we used push to push the date complete into the array. So what we're going to do now is we have to add a row number to our array so that we know what row needs to be deleted from the project tracker. So one of the methods that is in use here is once you select completed, you want to copy the data from the sheet so that it can be moved over to the completed tab. Additionally, you want it to be cleared out because it is no longer an active project. It has been completed. So we need to identify what row number needs to be deleted from the sheet. So we are going to need to add that data point to our array. So we are going to hit enter twice, hit the left arrow twice, add into slashes in order to add a comment. And we are going to say logging to declare the completed task. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do logger.log, empty parentheses, single quote, rows or row number, space, go outside of your single quote, use a plus symbol, and then we're going to reference I, and then we're going to use another plus symbol, space, single quote, space, has been completed. We're going to go to the right, and we're going to use a semicolon. We're going to hit enter. We're going to hit the left arrow twice, and then we are going to add the completed row to the array. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do data entry, square bracket I, go to the right of your square bracket, dot push, open parentheses I. Go to the right and use a semicolon. So we are going to run this function again to see some of our logging in here. So you can see this is our entire data, our list of lists coming from the sheet. We're identifying the last column of data, which is our completed column. We are then removing the true result from any value that is true, and we are adding in the completed date to the array. Finally, we are identifying the row number of the completed task. So if we go back to our project tracker, you can see we are identifying that it is row 1 because we are not pulling in our header row is 0, and this is technically 1 because we're still in a 0 indexed environment. So we are going to have to modify that, but that won't be too much trouble. So just so you can see, I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to check this, and this should return a number 2. Yep, so you can see now we have row number 2 has been completed. So our logic is all checking out. Wonderful. And we are using push in order to get that in there. So I'm just going to do a logger real quick just so you can see it. And we're going to do data entry. And when we run that again, you can see that we will also have an additional data point over here that is showing that the number 2 has been added into our data entry as well as the date. Cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use 2 slashes again, and we are going to append to the completed array. So we are going to reference array complete. That is that variable up top here. And then we are going to use the push method. We're going to use open parentheses, and we're going to type data entry square bracket I. And that is going to result in that data being pushed to our completed array. So I'm going to hit the down arrow once, down arrow twice. I'm going to hit enter twice. And then I am going to add some logging for the completed array. I'm going to hit enter, tab. I'm going to do logger.log, and I'm going to do array complete. I'm going to go to the right, enter a semicolon. I'm going to hit save, and I am going to run. And you can see we now have a list of lists with our completed projects, where we have the completed date as well as the row number that needs to be deleted. But again, this row number is 0 indexed, so it's going to have to be modified again before we use it to actually delete a row. So I'm going to hit X. I'm going to scroll down. So if there is anything that you want to review from this section, I'd recommend pausing the video now and taking a screenshot. Cool. So we are going to hit enter, and we are going to develop some logic. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm actually going to hit enter a couple times. You don't have to do this. I'm just doing it so that you have the this is a better viewing experience for you. A couple more rows. Cool. So we're gonna be just starting from our array complete here. We're gonna hit enter, and we are going to be using a try catch to evaluate the last column. So we are going to hit enter, tab, and we're going to use try, and we're going to use curly brackets. We're going to hit enter, and we are going to do logger.log, and we are going to use single quotes, and we're going to say array complete length, add a colon and a space, and then we're going to add another space, do a plus sign, and we're going to do array complete, and then we're going to use square bracket 0 dot length. We are going to go down one row, and we are going to hit enter, and we are going to type catch, and we're going to use empty curly brackets. So the reason that we're doing this is because in the event that we don't have any completed items, this logger.log will trigger an error because there is nothing to evaluate the length of. So when we run this, you can see we're getting all of our logging, and then we are getting the array complete length of 6. So we are also going to want to modify this one similarly to how we did it up here, because this is 0 index. So we're going to do -1. And we're going to have to wrap this into with parentheses here so that we get that, so we don't get any logical math errors because we're doing plus and minus and all that type of stuff. So you can see our array length, our array complete length is 5, right? So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. We now have a programmatic way of referencing our values. Now, the reason that we want that is because we are going to need to identify the the row that needs to be deleted. Now, again, that is going to have to be modified so that it actually aligns with the row number of the spreadsheet. But we will get there in a little bit. Cool. So now that we have that, we're going to go to the right of our catch. And actually, I just want you to see real quick, when I remove this in here, you don't have to do that. But when I don't have any completed items, you can see that it just returns a null result. So if we did not have this in try catch, we would get an error message The reason for that is because there is no length here, thus we don't have anything to produce a number. So when I go back in here and I do this and I have a completed and I run it again, you can see that we are getting a completed length of 5. Wonderful. So we're going to hit enter. We're going to go to the right. We're going to do 2 slashes to add a comment. And now we are going to remove the completed tasks from the entry sheet. So we're going to hit enter and we're going to do tab. We're going to do another try with curly brackets. So we're going to have a try catch in here. And we're going to loop through our completed array. So we're going to start with 4. We're going to do I in array complete. We're going to go to the right. We're going to add curly brackets. We're going to hit enter. We are going to access the sheet range. So we will be doing tab, and we're going to do tasks dot delete row. We're going to use an open parentheses, and then we are going to use number, open parentheses, and then we're going to do array complete, square bracket, I. Now, at this point, we need to enter in the column that references what needs to be deleted. But like I said, the array complete.length is set to a count that does not align with the 0 indexing that we have in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy that parentheses array complete square bracket 0 dot length minus 1. We're going to copy that and we're going to paste it into our second value. And we are going to be adding 1 to that so that instead of having the number 2, we will have the number 3, which is the actual row in here that we want to delete. So I don't want you to do this, but I want you to see what's happening here. So I'm going to save my project. Oops, sorry, I have something, an extra thing somewhere. So I have delete. Oh, it's because of my try. My apologies. So this is our 4 here. We have this try here. We're going to do catch, curly brackets. I'm going to save my project. I'm going to run it again. And now you can see we have successfully compiled our code. And when we go back in here, we are now deleting that row. So that's the reason that I didn't want you to do it, is because right now we haven't saved our data to the completed tab yet. So I don't want you to run it in case you have data in there. Now, in the event that you did just run that code and you deleted a line that you want, you can just undo it. So you can either hit this arrow up here, I'm going to hit Command Z, and now you can see my data has returned. Great, so this is a complicated line of code here. An additional way that you could manage this is by saving this portion here to a variable. So I'm going to go to line 50 underneath my first try catch. I'm going to hit enter twice, left arrow 4 times. I'm going to hit 2 slashes, and I'm going to say last column variable. I'm going to save it as var row delete is equal to array, that whole thing in there. So it's a parentheses, array complete, square bracket 0 dot length minus 1. And then you can just reference row delete in here like this. And I'm going to run this again. You don't have to. And you can see it works as expected. So long story short, what you need to take away from this is that I'm going to scroll up now. So I just want you to see you don't have to do this. when we added the completed row to the array, which is appearing as the last column in our array complete, that is defining the index number in a 0 indexed array of the value or the returned result that needs to be quote unquote deleted. Now, when we use the delete row function, that requires the actual row number. So in a 0 index, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. But in the delete row, we need to reference that this is row 3. Therefore, we can add 1 to the 0 index in order to get the appropriate number. That is precisely what's happening here when we're doing tasks.delete row. We are leveraging the number method in order to convert this value to a number so that 1 can be added to it to increase it from 2 to 3. If you do not convert this to a number, it will concatenate 1 with 2, and thus you will get a 2, 1 result, or your column number and 1 result. So it'll treat it as if it is a concatenation rather than a numerical computation. So that's why we're wrapping this value here in the number method, is so that we can run a math function in order to normalize our data so that it can run in the way that we want to, which is to delete the row. Cool. So now we are going to add in logic that will allow for us to write our completed values into the completed sheet. So I am going to scroll down so that this portion of the code is no longer visible on screen. If you would like to reference it, I'd recommend pausing the video so that you can compare your code with what I have on screen. And then when you're ready, we're going to scroll down and move on to the process of writing this to our sheet. Cool. So I'm going to hit enter twice, and I'm going to add 2 slashes, and I am going to say write the data to the completed sheet. So we're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab, and we're going to do var, and we are going to say tasks complete, and we're going to set that equal to get sheet by ID. That's that custom function that we created, and we're going to pass a sheet ID. So we're going to go back to our project tracker, and we're going to go to our completed sheet. We are going to copy our sheet ID, and we're going to go back to project tracker, and we are going to paste that value into the get sheet by ID function. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes, and then we are going to create a payload array. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable of payload, and we're going to set that equal to square brackets. We're going to go to the right, we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, left arrow twice, 2 slashes, and then we are going to loop through the completed array. We're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab. We're going to use a for loop, and we're going to say for I in, and then we're going to reference that array complete variable from all the way up top where we pulled in all of our data. So just to give you a refresher, I'm going to scroll up. You don't have to do this, but when we are using that for loop, we are referencing this array again. This is where we are pushing our values. So I'm going to scroll back down. So when we are saying for I in array complete, we are going to be looping through this value here. So we say for I in array complete, we're going to have curly brackets, we're going to hit enter. We are going to remove the row number. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to say array complete, square bracket I. We're going to go to the right, we're going to say dot pop. we're going to use open parentheses. We're going to hit enter. We're going to hit the left arrow twice, 2 slashes, and then we are going to say push the payload. We're going to hit enter and we're going to hit tab. Now the reason that we're doing .pop is because that's going to remove the row number. We no longer need that because we've already constructed logic that will delete the row number for completed results. So we no longer need this data because it's really not beneficial when we want to do a retrospective on work that we've completed. So we are now going to push the payload, or we're going to push the complete array to the payload variable. So we're going to type payload dot push. We're going to have an open parentheses, and we're going to pass array complete square bracket I. We're going to go to the right of our parentheses, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit down. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow twice, and then we're going to add 2 slashes, and we are going to add some logging. So we're going to hit enter, tab. We're going to do logger.log, parentheses. We are going to do tasks complete dot get last row, open parentheses, and then we're going to add 1. So we're going to save this, and I'm not going to run this now because I don't want this to delete any values for you before we write it to the sheet. We're going to hit enter, and then we're going to say logger.log. We're going to open up our parentheses, and we are going to pass our payload variable. We're going to hit enter. We're going to hit the left arrow twice. We're going to add 2 slashes, and we are going to say get the next row. We're going to hit enter. We're going to tab, and we're going to do tasks complete dot get range, open parentheses, and we are going to reference the last row. So we're going to do tasks complete dot get last row, open parentheses. Go to the right of the parentheses, space, plus sign, space, 1. We're going to have a comma, and then we're going to start at the first column, comma. We are only going to go 1 row, and then we are going to enter a comma, space, and we're going to reference our array complete. We're going to use square bracket 0. We're going to go to the right. We're going to do dot get, dot length. And then we're going to go to the right of our parentheses, and we're going to say dot set values. So you can see we have set value and values. Make sure you select values because we have more than one value. And we are going to pass our payload. We're going to go to the right. We're going to do a semicolon. We're going to hit enter. We're going to go to the left twice, 2 slashes, and then we are going to add a comment of create a new row. We're going to hit enter. We're going to hit tab, and then we're going to do tasks dot insert row after. So you saw we had insert rows. We're going to do insert row after, and then we're going to use parentheses, and we're going to do tasks dot get last row, open parentheses, go to the right, and a semicolon. So what we have now is some logic in here, and we are going to be making a slight modification. We want to make sure that all of this is within our try statement, because there are going to be some times where we don't have any completed tasks. And if we don't have it in a try catch, then we'll get errors anytime that we don't have a value. So we're going to scroll back up, and we're going to begin with our logging for the completed array. So take a moment and find this portion of your code. We're going to navigate down to the remove the completed tasks from the entry sheet section. We're going to scroll to line 62 or whatever yours is. And we are going to copy the catch all the way up to this curly bracket here. So you should have a curly bracket, catch, and then 2 curly brackets. So we're going to copy that. We're going to hit delete, and then we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to go to our last line here, and we're going to hit delete twice, and then hit left arrow twice, and then we're going to paste in our values. And now we should have a completed set of code that will allow us to accomplish the totality of our program. Now, before I run this, I just kind of want to walk through that last section that we just did. So we're going to begin at the write data to the completed sheet. So we're going to have a variable of tasks complete, and we're going to set it equal to get sheet by ID. We're going to be referencing our completed sheet. We are going to be declaring an empty array where we are going to be passing our completed array values. Now, the reason that we have this empty array is because we have a data point that we don't want to pass to our completed sheet. That is the row number that needs to be deleted. In the step prior to this, we established logic that will dynamically identify the row that has a completed task. Once we delete that row, we no longer need the last value in the array, which is the row number. So we're going to loop through our completed array in order to remove, using the pop method, that row number. We are then going to push our new array into the payload. Next, we need to access the completed task sheet, which is saved to the task complete variable. So we added this logging in here so that we could find the last row in the task complete tab. So at the present moment, we have no completed tasks in here. So we have our header row. Therefore, we want to write values to the next row. So we're using .getLastRow to return this value, and then we're adding 1 to identify the next row that we want to write to. That way, when we write something to this row, we will get the last row, and then we're going to add 1 to identify the next row that can have values written to it. So you can see in our task complete, which is this sheet that we're accessing up here, we're using get range, and then we're doing task complete .get last row plus 1, which is identifying the row that we want to start at. So we're going to dynamically get our starting row by identifying the last row with data, and then we're going to add 1 to it. We want to start at the first column. We only want to go 1 row, and then we want to go the length of the columns, which is why we're using array complete, and then we're getting the length of the first array, which is the column headers, to get a numerical value. We are then going to set values, which is our payload, which is coming from this array here. Finally, we are going to access our tasks sheet, which I'm going to scroll up, but you do not have to do this, right? We're going all the way up top here, and we are referencing line number 10, which is the initial sheet, which is where we're getting our tasks from. That is technically our project tracker sheet in here. So when it identifies that this is the row that needs to be deleted, it will also identify that this is where a row needs to be inserted. So when I scroll back down here, you'll see that we are using tasks.insertRow after, and then we're doing tasks.getLastRow, and then that is going to be entering a row in there. So I apologize, I misspoke there. We are not using this. We are just going down here, and then we're going to add in a new row. So at this time, I am going to save my project, and I'm going to take one last look at my sheet. And what I want to see is I want this row to be deleted because it is marked as complete. Additionally, after it's deleted, I want to make sure that I have row 21, which has my drop-down menus and a completed task box. Finally, I want to see that the data from that row, which is all the way up here, I want to see that these values, so 425, another project, reporting in progress, is added to my completed sheet over here, and that it has an end date of 4/20. Cool. So I'm going to hit run. I should get some logging down here. So you can see I'm getting all of the values from my task sheet. Identifying my last column of data. I'm pulling in an array that has a completed date, which is just today's date. I'm identifying which row has been completed. I've added the completed date and the row number to my array. I am then dynamically identifying how many columns I have with the new values entered in. I'm identifying the row number, and then I have a payload, which is an array of arrays, which has my start date, my project metadata, and the completed date. So now we're going to go back to our sheet to see that everything happened the way that we wanted it to. We saw some good news there. We now have values that have been entered into our completed tab. When we go to our project tracker, we see that that row is now blank, and we have 21 rows of data. So we've successfully accomplished the first portion of our project tracker. Now, we are missing one aspect of this. So I'm going to change this to be delivered, and then I'm going to enter in some new data. And you can see that when I add in a status, it is not being sorted. So that's another component that we want as part of this tracker, which is to have automation that allows us to enter data and then not have to actually do things. So we're going to go back to our AppScript code, and we are going to add another file. And this is going to be a script file, and it's going to be called func02:, and we're going to call it sorter. We're going to remove our function. We're going to save our project. We're going to begin by typing function, and then we're going to declare sorter. We're going to use a parentheses, and we're going to pass an argument of e. We're going to go to the right of our parentheses, and we're going to be using curly brackets. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to declare a variable called sheet name, and we're going to set it equal to getSheetById, that custom function that we have. And then we're going to go back to our project tracker, and we're going to collect our project code again. Or our project ID, or our sheet ID, my apologies. We're going to paste it in here. We're going to go to the right, and then we're going to use .getSheetName. We're going to use an open parentheses. We're going to go to the right. We're going to use a semicolon. We're going to hit enter. We're then going to declare a variable called range, and we're going to set it equal to e.range. So this is allowing us to dynamically identify the range that is being edited. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to declare a variable of sheet, and we're going to set that equal to e.source.getSheetByName, and then we're going to be referencing that sheet name variable dynamically. So this is just a way for us to logically identify what sheet name is having actions upon it. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to use a try statement. So we're going to have try and then empty curly brackets. We're going to hit enter. We're going to do 2 slashes so that we can add a comment called check if the edited range is on the specific sheet, aka what is being defined by the sheet name variable. We're going to hit enter, we're going to hit tab, and then we're going to use an if statement, and we're going to say sheet dot get name. We're going to use open parentheses, and we're going to set it equal to sheet name. We're going to go to the right of our parentheses, and we're going to use a curly bracket, and we're going to hit enter. We're going to declare a variable called range to sort, and we're going to set it equal to sheet.getRange. We're going to use open parentheses. Now, we don't want to sort. I'm going to click back to my sheet. I want you to stay in the AppScript file. I just want you to watch this. We do not want to sort our header column. we only want to sort our data range. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at row 2 instead of row 1. So we're going to enter in 2, we're going to do a comma. We want to sort our first column, so we are going to enter a 1 there. We're going to do comma, and then we're going to reference our sheet dot get last row. We're going to use an open parentheses. We're going to go to the right. Now, because we're starting at row 2, sheet.getLastRow is going to return the value of the last row. Therefore, we have to modify it to account for us starting 1 row above the range, right? So it's kind of a similar thing that we did here where it's like when we do sheet.getLastRow, it's going to return 21. But we don't actually want to do like basically the math needs to line up in there. We don't want to do all the way up to 21 rows. We just want to go 20 rows, right? So we just want to sort 20 rows of data because we are not sorting row number 1. So we have to adjust the value here because this is not referencing row 21. It's going 21 rows. So we need to adjust this to just go 20 rows. So we're going to do a -1 there. And then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to do sheet.getLastColumn, and we're going to use an open parentheses. We're going to go to the right of our .getRange method, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter, and then we are going to add double quotes, and we're going to say range to sort, and we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to reference our range to sort variable, and then we're going to use .sort, and then we're going to use open parentheses. And here's where we're going to hard code our column. So we are going to use curly brackets, and then we're going to say column colon space 4 comma ascending colon true. We're going to go to the right, and we're going to use a semicolon. We're going to hit down once, down twice, and then we're going to hit enter, and we're going to type catch and curly bracket. And now we have logic in here that will allow us to identify what column we want to sort by. Now, you'll notice here, we've hard-coded 4 in here. That's because we want to sort by the 0 index column 4. So we're going to have start date, project, priority, status. 0 or 1, 2, 3, 4. My apologies. That's not 0 index. This is just 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, you could dynamically reference this if you wanted to, using some of the logic that we used in previous examples. I didn't dynamically reference my status section, so I always wanted to keep that at number 4. But that's a fun little project in the event that you wanted to create additional logic in here where you could subtract, based upon where status is or what have you. So I'm going to save this function here. I'm going to hit run. It's going to give me an error because you can't do an on-edit sort like that. But you know what we'll do now? We'll go over to our triggers. And we're going to add in the automation for these values. So we are going to, sorry, I went a little fast there. We're going to go over to triggers. We are going to select create new trigger. And the first one that we're going to do is the task tracker. And we are going to select on edit. So you should have task tracker is the function you want to run, and the event type is on edit. We are going to save that. And then let's check it. That way, if you have any errors, you can go back and test it out. So I am going to select my completed status on that first one there. And you can see I selected it, and it automatically moved it over to the completed tab, which is precisely what I wanted. Great. So I'm going to add in another task. Sorting check. And then I'm going to add this priority to in progress. So you can see this is not sorting automatically yet. That's because we have not added sorter trigger to the trigger section. So we're going to go back in here, and we're going to add another trigger. and we're going to go to choose which function to run, and we are going to go to the sorter function, and then we are going to change on open to on edit, and then we are going to save it. Okay, cool. So you can see that we have now added these task trackers in here. And we are now going to test the sorting mechanism out. So you can see that I have the sorting check task here that is in progress. I'm going to change it from in progress to up next. And what I should see is that this should be reordered perfectly, right? So you can see that the sorting check was up next. It's now in review. We'll see if that changes anything. Nope, doesn't. So we'll just say that this has been delivered. And now you can see that we resorted it. So another test is up there. We can select completed. And now you can see we've completed our tasks. And now we have a sorting mechanism and an automation to our project tracker that allows us to move things up and down. Now, like I said, this sorter is hard-coded to 4. So if you add columns before column 4, then this logic will break down. I invite you to take this as a little test in order to figure out how to come up with some logic in order to dynamically reference your sorting column up top here. One recommendation that I would make is make sure that your status column is always next to your completed column. That way you could do last column -2 in order to always figure out your status. Or you can move it over here to column 1. That way it's always, get last column 1 or whatever. But I'll leave that up to you to figure out what you want to do in that mechanism. But now you could add columns. This always has to be the last column. This always has to be column 4 right now. But basically you can add and, expand and contract this environment however you want to. Cool. So the last thing that we are going to do in this video is going to be creating our to-do list over here. So the nice thing about that is that we can pretty much just copy over our task tracker function so that we have a mechanism in order to just kind of complete and delete things from this to-do list view. So I use this kind of as just like a scratch pad, which is really helpful for me on like Friday afternoons, for example, when I'm like, okay, what do I want to do next week? Or at the end of the day, I'll just like go in here and be like, do some stuff. And then it's like, once I'm done it, I can just like check it off and then it goes away, right? Because for my to-do list, it's not something that I really need to have a record of. If I do want a record of something, then I put it into my task tracker view. And then that way, once it's completed, I can just check it off and then boom, I have a record of, when I did it, how I did it, whatever, right? So we're going to go back to our AppScript and we're going to add a file and we're going to call it func03 and we'll call it to-do list. So again, we're just going to copy and paste our task tracker. So we're going to clear out that boilerplate code. We're going to go back to task tracker, which I apologize. I see now that I did task tracker, but I think by this point you can kind of see that it doesn't matter what you call it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to copy all of my code from the file. And I have to add in a curly bracket there because you can see I had a bunch of extra lines in there just for visibility purposes. So I'm adding that in there. And now you can see that we have all of our code in here. Now the cool thing is that we don't need a lot of it. So what we do need to do is change this from task tracker to do. So we'll just do to do, or you can call it whatever you want to. You can do to do tracker. I'm just going to call it to do. So what we need to do is just change this sheet ID here. So we're going to delete that and we're going to go back to our project tracker and we're just going to grab the ID of whatever is your to-do sheet and you'll paste it in there. And then we are going to collect all that data and we actually don't even really need our array complete up top here. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and we don't need anything after this section of code here. So when you have your for I in data entry and you have this true and the pop and all this type of stuff here, you don't need any of it anymore. remove this line of code here. So we're going to have data entry I.push date complete. We're going to have our logging to declare the completed task. And then we are going to do conditional logging. We're going to hit enter and we're going to say if parentheses data entry square bracket I 0 is equal to null. We're going to go to the right and we're going to use curly bracket and we're going to hit enter. And we're going to say logger.log single quote no data was removed. We're going to hit down arrow once. We're going to hit enter. I'm going to scroll up a little bit and we're going to say else. We're going to use a curly bracket. We're going to say logger.log the following data was removed from to-do list. And we are going to add a colon and a space, and then we're going to do a space after the single quote, and we're going to do plus, and then we're going to say data entry square bracket I. We are going to use a colon. We're going to go underneath the else. So we're going to hit the down arrow. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit left arrow. We're going to delete row. So we're going to reference tasks.delete row, and then we're going to use number parentheses I space plus 1. We're going to hit enter, and then we are going to insert row. We're going to hit enter, tab tasks.insert row after, and then we're going to use tasks.get last row. And then we're going to use an open parentheses. And this should result in our function removing from the to-do list. So basically everything underneath these curly brackets here can be removed. So the logging for the completed array, all this stuff down here can be deleted. So what you should have now is tasks is equal to whatever the sheet ID is of your to-do list. So go up top here, grab this, and paste it in here. And then all the rest of this code is exactly the same as your task tracker until you get down to the conditional within the for loop. So you really don't even need this pop statement in here because all you need to identify is the row number that needs to be deleted. So this is like the real key aspect of this code here, where you're adding in tasks.delete row, and then you're converting the row number or the I value to a number so that you can add 1 to it, because you're going to return like row 2 was completed or 1 was completed in the 0 index array, so you need to just reference it as 2. So I'm going to do some tests, and you can see in here I'm going to do, hopefully this works, doesn't matter. So we're going to go in here, and you know what I'll do? I'm going to check this, and when I run this, you can see that we are identifying our last column of data. You can see up top here, we have our header, and then we have a bunch of false statements and true, and then you can see row number 4 has been completed. The following data was removed from the to-do list. Hopefully this works. So then we go back to our project tracker, and you can see it's been removed, and we still have 10 rows of data in here. So now when we run this, we should get a message that just says, yeah, perfect, like nothing needs to be deleted. So we're going to go back here. We're going to check this off. You can see that that has been updated. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add some data just so you can see that this won't impact anything on this sheet. So you can see row 2 is checked in our to-do list. Project tracker also has data in the second list. And when we run this, you can see that the following was removed. So this data is staying. This data has been cleared out, and it's our completed sheet has not added anything from our to-do list. Just to kind of review our code there, because I was a little it was a little unclear as I was looking through. What we did was we just copied our task tracker function, right? So all the things that you wrote in task tracker can be reused for your to-do function. Make sure you rename your function so that it's not task tracker, because if you have two functions of the same name, it won't be able to differentiate between the two. So make sure when you copy over, or when you paste over task tracker, you have a unique function name in here. You don't need this code here, so you can keep it if you want to. You can comment it out. You can delete it. You're going to change your sheet ID, and then everything is going to remain the same. You're going to go down here. You should see array complete is equal to. This doesn't matter anymore. Again, this is something that you can delete if you want to. You're going to go into your for loop, and then you're going to go into your if conditional. Again, this drop the true result no longer matters. You don't need it, but it doesn't matter if it's in there. You can keep it, comment it, delete it, whatever you want to. You're going to keep all of this stuff here. This conditional logging in here is just a helpful way for you to see what's going on in here. The real thing that you have to add, or everything else needs to be removed except for these two rows here. You need to make sure that you have delete row where you're referencing your tasks sheet, which is referencing your to-do list sheet ID. And then you're just going to want to insert rows after so that you always add a row whenever you subtract a row. Once you make sure that this code aligns with what code you have in your workbook, we're going to go over to triggers. We are going to add a trigger, and we are going to say to do. We're going to select the event as on edit, and we are going to save to do. What this will allow us now is we can now add items to our list. Check to see if this works. Last thing, and then I'm going to go down a couple rows and I'm going to say maybe this works. Cool. So the way that this should now work is we should be able to just select things from our to-do list and they will be removed. Oh, perfect. So we click this. This should now be removed. Perfect. Now, the one thing that is confusing me a bit here is that we're getting a high error rate on task tracker. I don't believe that that same mechanism is happening on my live file. So what we're going to do is dive into this a little bit to see what is happening here. So we're going to go into our executions log, and we're getting this failed status in here. Which is the result of not having any values in here. Oh, well, that doesn't make sense because we have values in here. Task tracker 5341. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to go back into our editor here. My apologies that this wasn't picked up before. So our error there was coming from line 53. So this is likely because this is not in a try catch. So it's running this code outside of our try catch. So what we're going to do is we are going to just copy this try statement in here. So I apologize that we have to go back to our task tracker so late in this video because I do know this is a long one. But if you are getting errors at that particular portion, which you can see is not impacting the front end visualization in here, like this is still operating. But the reason that we're getting errors in our execution log, and the reason that I could see that we were getting errors, I apologize for bouncing around. You can see here we're getting an error rate of 90.63%. We can investigate this further by going to executions. And you can see that we're getting a failure of reading length at task tracker 5341. So that resulted in me going to my editor, going to task tracker, and then going down to 53.1. It's because this array complete, there's nothing that's been completed, right? So you can see in here, we have values and it's looking to see if there's a completion, and to see what array complete length -1 is, there is no array complete. So we're going to fix this by removing this try. So we're going to copy that, and we're just going to go back up top here. We're going to hit enter, and then we're going to just add try in here. Therefore, when you know what I'm going to do, that's the solution. I just want you to see what happens. So I'm going to run task tracker manually, and you can see that it completed without error. Now I'm going to hit Command Z. So this is the code before we made that adjustment. And when I run it, we should get an error. So you can see that we're now getting that line 53 reading length error because this code is attempting to run and it can't. So the way that we solve it is by wrapping it in try. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to run it again. And now you can see we no longer have any errors. So when our triggers run, this error percentage is going to go down. My apologies if you do have an error percentage in here. It should be solved based upon the action that we just took. In conclusion, this is how to build one way to build an automated project tracker and to-do list in Google Sheets using Google AppScript. I know that this was probably complicated at times to follow along with. So I hope I clarified in a way that allowed you to work these things out on your own. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, please reach out in the comments. Please send me an email if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. I'm very passionate about this work, and if I can open up this line of work to others, it's very satisfying for me. So if you are interested in this stuff, I have a bunch of other projects on my channel page that I would encourage you to check out. And yeah, I hope you have the best of luck with this project and that it was enjoyable for you.